Let's start. This is the last session of the day. We have 2 more talks, and I should mention that we are, whoever wants to join for drinks afterwards, we're gonna go to Mid Hall, which is about 2 minutes walk from here, and everybody's welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce you, Zhang, who did his PhD very close to here, across the street at MIT CCL in Jim Glass's group. He did very interesting work on ASR there, and he since has moved to Google Brain in Mountain View. And he came all the way from California to this freezing weather to tell us all about the whole Tacotron effort on end-to-end speech synthesis. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk, and also thanks, Shinji, to invite me to give this talk. So this talk is about the recent effort Google made for end-to-end speech synthesize. The effort on Tacotron actually started before I joined Google, so I'm just on behalf of people who are working on end-to-end TDS at Google. So first, thanks all the collaborators. So this is a joint work with Google AI Perception team, Google Brain team, Google TTS research team, and recently my intern from MIT, Wei-Ning Xu, also contributed a lot to the whole system. And a special thanks to Daisy and Yuxuan who helped me making these slides. So here's the outline of the talk. So first, I'll give a short introduction about text-to-speech. And the first part is about end-to-end speech synthesize, more particular Tacotron 2, like how we use end-to-end systems to synthesize human speech. And secondly, it's about multispeaker text-to-speech synthesize, like how can we synthesize many different voices. And then I'm gonna introduce how we synthesize the expressive speech using a global style token model. And at the end, I'm going to introduce some recent effort about controllable speech synthesize. So first, what is text-to-speech? So the task is quite simple. So basically, you read the text and generate a waveform using computer. Traditionally, there is a called concatenative synthesize and also parametric synthesize. Although the concept is simple, but the system is quite complicated. This is part of the reason why I didn't choose TTS as my thesis topic during my PhD. Like you need text norm pipeline, NLP, G2P, duration model, pitch prediction, and after you got acoustic prediction, you need a vocoder to get the waveform. So as I said, as we can see, the text-to-speech is actually a sequence mapping problem. So it's basically map text to waveform. And recently, there's a framework called sequence-to-sequence framework. And a follow-up work is adding attention with that. And for both ASR and machine translation, people already get state-of-the-art result using the sequence-to-sequence framework. Basically, it's map one type of sequence to the other one. So for ASR, it's mapping waveform to text. And for machine translation, it's mapping one languages to the other language's text. And for TDS, we can think about the same way, it's just mapping text to waveform. So why we choose end-to-end, why we want to do end-to-end TDS? So first, it's a simple pipeline. And I'm going to show you, like, we also get better performance. And in this talk, I also want to try to demonstrate like it enable rich and easy conditioning of various attributes. And it also makes it possible to train a TTS on large and noise, but expressive real-world data. Like before, most of TTS system is trained on studio quality, like single speaker, professional speaker data set. So the whole framework is based on this system called Tacotron, which proposed by Yuxuan Wang at 2017. Basically, we have an encoder to read the to encode the text to one of the hidden representation, and the attention gonna read the representation from the text encoder, and the decoder gonna try to mapping the hidden representation from the attention to the male spectrogram features. And and there's another post-processing net to convert log male features to linear spectrogram and then use Grifflim to map it to the final waveform. So if you map this back to the traditional system, so basically you can imagine encoder is an NLP lexicon plus G2P modular, and attention doing kind of duration modeling. And the pitch prediction and acoustic prediction is doing by decoder and the postnet. And Grifflim plays a role like the vocoder. So the first paper I'm going to introduce is the natural TTS synthesized by conditioning wavenet on male spectrogram prediction. The difference of this work compared to Tacotron, which is this paper is the first paper it matched. So using an end-to-end system, it matched the basically human level performance on short phrase TTS synthesize. So I think 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, on the same workshop, there is a talk about the wavenet. It's really it's a big breakthrough on the TTS community. So basically, wavenet can generate very realistic speech. But there still have some problem for wavenet. Not mentioned it's very slow. It's also like it's still using hand-engineered TTS features like linguistic features, predicted F0 and duration. And the prosody is also limited by the input features. So the Tacotron 2 basically it combines a Tacotron system, so it can still have the excellent prosody from Tacotron, and it's still end-to-end. But we replace Grifflim by a neural vocoder using wavenet. So the framework is like we still using the Tacotron to predict the male spectrogram, and the wavenet is conditioned on the teacher-forced male spectrogram, and you can get the final waveform samples. And by doing that, we find it gives us better prosody, and also it can have the good fidelity from wavenet. Just a quick summary about Tacotron 2. It has so we compared to Tacotron, we have a simplified encoder, and we using location-sensitive attention. And for decoder, we adding zone-out regularization. And the postnet is just a couple convolution layers, and we using L1 plus L2 loss. A recently changed, which didn't present in the paper, is we replace wavenet to WaveRN, which published by DeepMind. Basically, it's a fast version of wavenet, so you can synthesize the video like 100 times faster. So here's the result from Tacotron 2. The score is from human rater. So basically, it's a five scaled scores. You can see parametric is the traditional system, and this is a wavenet, but conditional linguistic features, and this is ground truth, and this is a result from Tacotron 2. So I want to mention this. So to get this number, we synthesize 100 different phrases. It's all short phrases. Okay, now let me show you some demos using Tacotron 2. So first, it was able to synthesize the out-of-domain words.
Basilar membrane and otolaryngology are not autocorrelations.
And even there are some spelling errors because the model is trained end-to-end. It was able to fix that.
This is really awesome.
And context dependency.
He thought it was time to present the present.
And even some really hard sentence, which I cannot read.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure.
Yeah. So back to the point we try to make, like what's the difference compared to Tacotron and wavenet conditional linguistic feature besides its end-to-end. So here's one example. For longer sentence, Tacotron system tends to have better prosody when it reads long sentence. So the first example is from wavenet.
Dudley began to cry loudly. In fact, he wasn't really crying, it had been years since he'd really cried, but he knew that if he screwed up his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. Dinky Duddydums, don't cry, Mummy won't let him spoil your special day, she cried, flinging her arms around him.
Yeah, and this is from Tacotron system.
Dudley began to cry loudly. In fact, he wasn't really crying, it had been years since he'd really cried, but he knew that if he screwed up his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. Dinky Duddydums, don't cry, Mummy won't let him spoil your special day, she cried, flinging her arms around him.
I mean, it's not perfect, but compared to the previous system, I think the processing got improved, and but it's still like a assistant voice. Just like the human narrator side, the Tacotron 2 sounds more natural in this case. Okay, so the question is TDS has been solved? Definitely the answer is no. It's still lack of controllability, like there are tons of variability in audio, speaker, prosody, and noise. And the demo I showed in the previous slides, it's basically you have a professional speaker and it speaks in one type of the voice. And we want like have expressive voice modeling. And the problem of the system is it still requires high quality data, and it's not practicable for all the speakers. So the first question is, can we synthesize high quality speech for multiple speakers? And the second question is, can we synthesize expressive speech? And at the end, I'm gonna show something about controllable speech synthesize. Okay, the first work is we recently published paper. It's called Transfer Learning from Speaker Verification to Multiple Speaker Text-to-Speech Synthesize. As I mentioned, traditional TTS training data, it requires high-quality professional recording. And for each speaker, it usually needs like 10 plus hours data, and it's all needs transcribed. But think about that, like people who are doing speaker verification. We already know to have high quality speaker verification system, we need tons of data from each speaker. But we do not need these data are high quality. Like we don't need transcribe. The data can be noise. So compared to the for Tacotron-based system, you can simply using an embedding table for each speaker. But first, like I mentioned, it's impractical on data collection side, and it's also not generalized well on unseen speakers. So we are trying to decouple speaker modeling from speech synthesize. So since speaker modeling has different data requirement, we can separately train a speaker encoder and let the TDS system condition on that speaker encoding. And when we train the speaker encoding, we can use tons of data. It can be noise, can be like no transcription. So here's a overview of this model. So basically, it's based on Tacotron 2, but we condition on the a speaker embedding called a D-vector. I think most of people know like I-vector, which represents a speaker attributes and trained from the called I-vector system. The D-vector is just another version of a vector, and it shows like state of the art for speaker verification. So the whole system is like we taking the representation from the separately trained speaker encoder and let the system condition on that and synthesize voice. And during inference time, given like a 5 seconds reference speech, you can use the speaker encoding to generate the speaker embedding and send it to the TDS system, and it's gonna mimic that voice for that particular speaker. Like I said, the speaker encoder is trained on Google internal data, but you can use any public available data as long as you have a good speaker verification system. So the D-vector is nothing more, just convert one utterance to a kind of speaker embedding, and there's no needs for transcription. It can be noise. So our experiment is doing on Libre speech clean, and is conditioned on the speaker embedding from the speaker encoder. we also did, although the libre speech claimed it's libre speech clean, but it actually has lots of noise speakers. So we also did spectrum subtraction to pre-process the data, and we find it's very helpful. So here are the key results. And no need to read all the numbers. So basically, the message I want to send is the proposed model can achieve reasonable MOS score, like on both VCTK single on SANE condition, we got like around 4.0 MOS score. And with a high MOS, we also get reasonable we also get reasonable speaker similarity based from the human raters. So it's also the 5-scale human rater, 5-scale ratings. Like for ground truth, the similarity is like 4.3, and our best system condition on 5 seconds on SANE speech, it's produced like 3.0 similarity. So in that interface, like 3.0 means similar. So we can get like reasonable similar speech to achieve like zero-shot learning. Yeah. And we also did the ablation study. I think the most important message from this paper we want to send is by having more data to train the speaker encoding, we can get a better similarity. And you can see if the speaker encoder is trained on libre speech clean only, libre speech others, libre speech plus voice celebrity, which is another open source data set. And you can see as long as we increase the amount of the data, both the similarity and the naturalness got improved. And also we also use a separate speaker verification system to calculate the EER versus the ground truth audio. And you can see our best system got around like 5% EER, which is I think it's quite reasonable. And another question is how to compare with jointly training encoder. Like you can during training you can use you can train the embedding based on a clip of the audios. You can see our system also outperforms the joint training model, and without speaker loss. So one thing we noticed that is if you jointly train the model, the synthesized speech is highly depends on the prosody of the reference clip you give to the system. Like this is why it has lower MOS score. Like sometimes if the reference speech has some special prosody, the synthesized voice also try to copy it and makes the result worse. Okay, now the more fun part is a demo. Like here's all this. So we you probably cannot see it. So here all the speaker is on SANE from the training, and I'm gonna show the both results from VCTK and libre speech. So first VCTK, this is a reference audio.
The Norsemen considered the rainbow as a bridge over which the gods passed from Earth to their home in the sky.
This is the ground truth. This is a synthesized speech, which is only conditioned on 5 seconds from that speaker, and the training data never seen it before.
Take a look at these pages for Crooked Creek Drive. There are several listings for gas station. Here's the forecast for the next 4 days.
And another speaker.
These take the shape of a long round arch with its path high above and its two ends apparently beyond the horizon.
Take a look at these pages for Crooked Creek Drive. There are several listings for gas station. Here's the forecast for the next 4 days.
And another data set, libre speech. Libre speech contains more speaker, but the data quality is worse than VCTK.
Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention.
This is ground truth reference speaker.
Take a look at these pages for Crooked Creek Drive.
This is synthesized voice.
There are several listings for gas station.
Yeah, so short summary. So we were able to decouple the speaker encoding and TTS. So then it's easy to combine with other approach. Like if you have better TTS system, you can simply condition on that speaker encoder. And the most important message is more data is helpful. So which means as long as you can improve the speaker encoder, your system can also be improved. And we got reasonable performance for voice cloning given 5 seconds reference speech. So the second question is, multiple speaker TTS is relatively easy because for speaker you have the labels. Since you have the labels, so you can easily train it separately and utilize more data. But how about the prosody? So like the variation inside the speaker, which you don't have any annotations. So the next paper I want to talk about is style tokens. I try to unsupervised learn the style from speech and in the end-to-end speech synthesize system. Sorry, what happened? Okay. So the motivation is we want to do expressive speech synthesize, not like just assistant voice. And so the first challenge is prosody and style label are hard to obtain, and the long form speech synthesize with expressive voice is hard. Like the high dynamic range in expressive voice is hard to model. And we also want to try to addressing the average prosody issue. So here's a overview of the model structure. So the difference compared to the regular Tacotron system, the key difference is we introduce this trainable style tokens embedding. So basically, we have a spectrogram encoder which encodes each utterance. Not that it's a global encoder. It summarizes the whole audio to prosody embedding, and we use that prosody embedding to query from the style tokens embedding table. So during training, we're gonna get a style embedding from the attention output. So you can imagine like this is kind of do a soft clustering during the training. And at the end, after the model converged, each token gonna associate with a particular styles. We have some interpretation about this model. So it's kind of doing end-to-end software clustering. And this, you can also imagine this style token embedding as a memory augmented neural networks. And the attention weights provide some like virtual labels. And it's also, I'm gonna show later, it's gonna also provide a kind of interpretability and control during inference. So first, during inference, so one way you can always give a reference signal to that encoder, and the model gonna try to mimic that reference audio. But in the other way around, you can also remove all the spectrogram encoder part by only selecting one of the tokens, and you can listen like what that token associate with to control the synthesized speech, the style. So here's some typical style we learned from that model. The token ABCD is just one of the token from the embedding. So basically, we give the weight for a particular token and close all the other tokens, set the weights to 0. Like this is the token A sounds like.
There are several listings for gas station.
Token B.
There are several listings for gas station.
Token C.
There are several listings for gas station. There are several listings for gas station.
Like this is more low pitched, and token E.
There are several listings for gas station.
It sounds like kind of sad, and just want to show this also transferred to other text. You can see another sentence also using token E.
United Airlines 563 from Los Angeles to New Orleans has landed.
Yeah.
There are several listings for gas station.
So the task becomes like you train the model and you find some interesting token and you select the token and it's gonna read the text like what you want. Yeah. And another interesting property we find is if you change the weight, you can also kind of change the how it sounds like that style. So for example, there's one token we find is control the speed.
Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. You go a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. Your link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages.
Read faster and faster, but you can also notice that it's not just changing the speed; it's also changing some other attributes of the speech. So I think which is another research challenge we need to solve in the future work, like how to make it more disentangled. And another example is animated speech.
Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages. Here you go, a link for Biondo Racing products and other related pages.
And one interesting thing we find that is, although during training all the weight is positive, but even you give some negative results, the model negative weights, the model was able to generalize to that values. This is quite interesting. So another example was this model can also do the non-parallel style transfer. So for example, given the reference, this is a reference speech.
Something, however, happened this time that had not happened before. His stare into my face, through the glass and across the room, was as deep and hard as then. But it quitted me for a moment, during which I could still watch it, see it fix successively several other things.
And if we use a vanilla Tacotron, it's almost like you use a natural prosody to a neutral prosody or average prosody to read the text. It's like.
He was pale as smoke, and Harry could see right through him to the dark sky and torrential rain outside. You look troubled, young Potter, said Nick, folding a transparent letter as he spoke, and tucking it inside his doublet. So do you, said Harry.
And this is a result from GFC.
He was pale as smoke, and Harry could see right through him to the dark sky and torrential rain outside. You look troubled, young Potter, said Nick, folding a transparent letter as he spoke and tucking it inside his doublet. So do you, said Harry.
Yeah, if you compare the reference and the synthesize like side by side, you can see it's kind of follows the movement of the prosody. A quick summary. So actually, if you are interested in a more audio example in the paper, and you can find the more example on the Tacotron GitHub repo, and not just for the prosody. Like if you train this model on noise data, you also find like some token can learn some noise speech, and some token is associated with clean speech. So it's a simple but powerful unsupervised method to modeling speaking style in end-to-end TTS. And we believe it's a general technique to uncovering latent variation in the data. And as I mentioned, there are many different applications you can see from the paper. So the next question is, can we get rid? So right now we already have a good multi-speaker model, and we also have a good prosody model to model the variability inside each speaker. So can we? So first, can we get rid of the reference signal, like make the TDS more controllable? And second, is that ready to scale up to found data? Like we can, just like train ASR, give you an arbitrary data set, you can train a TDS system from it. So this is inspired another work that we use generative model for controllable speech synthesize, and this is the work is mainly done by Wei Ning, who did a summer intern this year at Google. So the motivation, let me recap the motivation. So first, TDS is, so compared to other sequence-to-sequence problem, TDS is a one-to-many mapping problem. Like reading the same text, you can have many different ways to read it. And the variability can come from like speaker, which is easy to get a label. And it you also want like the different speed for speaking and the prosody and also acoustic condition and different background noise. So we want a single model which can factorize all these variabilities. So the challenges, there are some challenges. So first, the presence of multiple latent attributes is actually quite common in cross-source data. So for example, on libre speech, there are lots of speakers, it's fully noisified. let's say if for one speaker, if half are clean and half are noisified, you can find a way like factorize it's clean or noise. But most of the case, the whole channel is being noisified. So can we synthesize clean speech for these speakers? A simple solution is we can combine Tacotron 2D plus GST by condition on two different modular, but it still need reference signals. And in many times, the reference signal usually contains multiple attributes. Like you cannot find a clean reference for a particular speaker. And going one step further, like sometimes we also want to sample from different attributes. Like you want to sample some new speakers, or you want to sample some new styles from the model. So to summarize the goal of this work is we want to disentanglement, so we want to learn a disentangle latent space, and each space can correspond to one of the factors during data generative process. And we also interpretability, like by perturb one of the dimension, you can interpolate it to one of the attributes. And we also want to provide a systematic way to sample random latent factors from a defined prior distribution. And at the end, we also hope the prior distribution can represent some representative mode in the speech. So for example, one prior can be noise, and one type of noise, and one mode of the prior can be the clean speech. I'm not going to say we solved all these three problems, but this is kind of our high-level goals. So here's how we design the model. So it's natural to using variational-based models. So we use a variational autoencoder to compute the latent space. And we want the prior distribution can force it to a nicer latent space. And by traversing the prior space, we want to identify different attributes. And we hope the prior mode can capture different representative styles. So then the challenge becomes, so first a stable VAE training recipe, and we want an effective audio encoder, and we need to choose prior distribution, and we also want proper regularization for disentanglement, like how you can force each dimension represent different attributes. So this is our current solution. So we use convolution plus LSTM plus pooling audio encoders, pretty standard. And we're using Gaussian mixture model-based prior. And we want each mixture can capture. So first we want the generative process is like, so first you choose one representative mixtures, and then you sample from that Gaussian to get the variability inside each mixtures. And we also force the diagonal covariance to make the model more disentangled. And at the end, our model structure is like this. Given one clip of the audio sequences, we have two latent. We have two audio encoder, one for the latent attributes such as prosody or noise, which is hard to get labels, and another latent, another encoder which is for the observed attributes, so for example, speakers. And the Tacotron 2 model is conditioned on the output from both encoders. And by and during inference, you can traverse like each latent space and get like, so for example, you can pick one speaker from the observed attributes and perturb the other residual latent attribute encoder to get different prosody from that particular speakers. So we did the experiments across 4 different data sets. So the first one is a multi-speaker English corpus. It's from professional speaker. The main variation in this corpus is accent and speakers. And the second is we noisify the multi-speaker corpus. So it introduces another variability, which is synthetic noise. And the third corpus is the corpus I showed before. It's a single speaker audiobook corpus. So the reader has lots of variation when it reads the books. And the third one we call the Libre TTS. So basically the same set of speaker and speech as Libre speech. And the difference is we use it more proper for TTS, like it's 24K. And the segmentation is different. Like we try to keep the whole sentence compared to Libre speech, which is for ASR. And we're gonna release this dataset soon. The model is, as I mentioned before, we train like 2 conditional VAE using Gaussian mixture priors, and we fix all the model like 10 mixtures and with 16 hidden dimensions. So here's a result from the first corpus, multi-speaker English corpus. I'm gonna show some representative mixtures like for this model. Mixture 1 is mainly captures some male speaker voice.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
Another sample.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
Like it's male speaker, but with slightly different sounds when you sample from the space. And we also find another component which capture mostly GB and AU female speakers.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
And another interesting thing is we also find like for dimension 2, so one of the you can also control the latency attributes by giving each dimension different values. Like for dimension 2, we find it's correspond to speed from fast to slow.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
And another dimension we find is interesting. It's changed the accent from US to British.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
Sorry about that.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
How can I stop this? Sorry, I'm barely use PPT, so I usually use.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
My God.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
Caught again.
Let me. Okay, let me do it again.
The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again. The fake lawyer from New Orleans is caught again.
The fake lawyer from.
Sorry, I have been a very long time didn't use PPT, so yeah, let me just do it again. But Google Doc is cannot insert audio, so it's another problem. So another experiment is doing on the noise-fied multi-speaker English corpus. So here we're using a room simulator to add background noise and reverberation. The background noise is from YouTube, so most of it is musical noise. And the 82 speakers are 50% noisified, and we also held out 2 speakers which are 100% noisified. So we want to see if the model can learn noisify or not or clean, if it can generalize to the 100% noisified speakers. And the model is here we only want to investigate the noise condition. So we use the speaker embedding table, and we use a VAE to capture the noise information. And here I'm gonna show some demos. So we can find that we can find the model naturally learns some of the mixture is not generates noise speech, and some of the mixture generates clean speech. So for example, this is using the 100% fully noisified speaker. So you can listen
This model is trained on multi-speaker English data.
Some loud wideband noise, and there's another kind of noise.
This model is trained on multi-speaker.
It automatically learns some like low frequency noise with reverb, and this is.
This model is trained on multi-speaker English data.
If you use a earphone, you can listen some musical noise. And if you switch to a clean mixtures, and using the same speaker.
This model is trained on multi-speaker English data. This model is trained on multi-speaker English data. This model is trained on multi-speaker English data.
It can generate clean speech, so the model can automatically learn the different mode of the noise, and one of the mode is clean speech. And you can also control the noise level by traverse the noise dimension, like this.
Traversing the noise level dimension. Traversing the noise level dimension.
You can see at the end there's some noise, and if you increase the value, it's
traversing the noise level dimension.
Clean speech, yeah. And if you take a closer look at the prior distribution from the noise control dimension, you can actually find that there are two groups of mixtures that are clearly separate in this dimension. Like this is a clean. Left side is a clean, and right side is a noise. And you can also find like the clean components have lower variance than the noise components, which is intuitively true, because the clean speech is always clean, and the noise has different kinds of noise. Yeah. And here's another data set, which is a single speaker audio book corpus. We want to learn how it can learn the different prosody. I think I don't have enough time, so I'm gonna skip the demo from this part, because it's kind of similar to the GST result. But one difference is given this model, you can easily random sample different styles. And you can also control the style attributes. And one interesting we find is like the prior, like if you pick one of the mixture, you have to listen all 10 different mixtures. And if you pick one of the mixture which sounds natural, and it actually learns a better natural prosody. You can see here is a MOS score. Like the baseline is already very good, because so here we choose 200 or 150 different phrase from Harry Potter book. It's all long sentence, but since the synthesized speech is really has expressively, so the baseline is also very high. But you can see the proposed model is still much better. Like so, for example, you can see this is a baseline.
You've forgotten Pimply, Peeves hissed in her ear. Moaning Myrtle burst into anguished sobs and fled from the dungeon. Peeves shot after her, pelting her with moldy peanuts, yelling, "Pimply, Pimply." "Oh dear," said Hermione sadly.
So the baseline is kind of like it's random pick some styles and repeat some patterns. But as I learned prior...
You've forgotten Pimply, Peeves hissed in her ear. Moaning Myrtle burst into anguished sobs and fled from the dungeon. Peeves shot after her, pelting her with moldy peanuts, yelling, "Pimply, Pimply." "Oh dear," said Hermione sadly.
Yeah, I think it's read in a more natural way.
"You've forgotten Pimply," Peeves hissed in her ear.
Start again. At the end, I want to show another example, which is using the which is doing on the cross-sourced audiobook LibreSpeech. So in this corpus, since it's also audiobook, so it has some prosody variation, and it's cross-sourced, so it's also have different kinds of channel and background noise. Now we do not need to do denoising, because the prior can automatically find like clean mode and noise mode, and we use two VAE, one for speaker and one for residual information. So first, here are some. Before I show in the demo, here are some quantitative result. You can see we find there's one dimension which is control the noise level. So you can see the SC means synth clean, synth noise speaker, unsynth clean speaker, unsynth noise speaker. And you can see for clean speaker, it has high SNR, and the baseline also has high SNR. And if we pick one clean mode, it's all consistently has high SNR, even like the original speaker is noisified. And here's if you infer from the latent space, because that speaker is noisified, so the latent space synthesized voice is also noisified. And if you do denoising on that dimension, we call it like a latent denoise result. You can see you can get even higher SNR, so more clean basically. And we also find we also do the human evaluation, because sometimes you achieve denoising, but you lose naturalness. But we can find in our result, it's all get reasonable MOS score, like higher than 4.0. On SANE clean, it's 4.1. Like you can see, if we do denoising on the training data, we can get slightly higher MOS, but it's still worse than the proposed model. And we also compare with, on the on-SANE condition, we also compared with Tacotron 2D, and the MOS also better. Here are some demos. So for, let me go to the page directly. So first I want to show is control. So like we find some dimension represent different property of the speech. Like this one is pitch from low to high.
People see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him. When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
And this is high pass to low pass.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him. When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
And this is kind of learn some reverberation, because the data has some reverb, I believe.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him. When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
This is a noise dimension I mentioned.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
When people see a man toiling, they have an irresistible impulse to crowd round and stop him.
And given that we were able to synthesize high quality speech for some low quality speakers, so for example,
in the world of letters,
like all the training data for this speaker sounds like this, and if you synthesize from the latent space from that speech directly, you're also gonna copy the noise part. And if you like, we can either denoising by perturb that latent dimension.
Kenneth decided that he was ill at ease and in a state of dogged self-repression.
That sounds better. And the other way is we can also choose clean mode. Depends on what you want. Like we found like component 5 always capture clean speech. Remember, it's a Gaussian mixture model. Yeah.
Kenneth decided that he was ill at ease and in a state of dogged.
And yeah, just listen another speaker.
You'll see if a good cup of tea and those plum pops I made.
And if you infer from the latent space directly.
Kenneth decided that he was.
Yeah, and this is denoising.
Kenneth decided that he was ill at ease and in a state of dogged self-repression.
Kenneth
decided that he was ill at ease and in a state of dogged self-repression.
Okay. So the conclusion is end-to-end speech synthesis is promising, and it's simple, powerful, and flexible. Like you can easily formulate as you can also easily formulate as a sequence generative model problem, and you can condition on different things to get different properties. But in future, one thing we should explore is right now all the audio encoder is still like global. It has a global style control. Like for one audio clip, you only get one embeddings. But if you want to get more fine-grained control on word level, you need a segmental-based audio encoders. And this also so I think the next is so the short phrase TDS is pretty good. So the next step is how can we read a book naturally, called like context-aware TTS. When you read the book, you should remember what you read before and what you read next. And this also provide opportunity train it on large-scale found data because it can automatically uncovering different modes. And we hope in future we can train it on many data and it can synthesize different kinds of voice. And thanks for listening. If you are interested, we have a website. It's called Google, GitHub, and Tacotron. And all the work I mentioned already in that Git repo, and all the demo was there, and the paper was also there. You can feel free to look at and ask questions. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, are there questions?
Thank you for the talk. Could you tell us what's the dimensionality of your D vector, and also what's the overall dimensionality of the neural net in terms of megabytes of data in it?
I think I'm sure the D vector dimension is 256, but it's better to check on the paper in case if I forgot anything. And the total size of the neural network I think is 100 megabytes. Yeah.
Yep, thank you very much for a great talk. I was just wondering, between the WaveNet route and the WaveRNN route, there was one way of being able to synthesize the waveform in real time using the WaveNet, parallel WaveNet student-teacher thing, and then there's this WaveRNN. For practical applications, is this kind of speaking to the end of not trying to think about the student-teacher thing, and the WaveRNN is kind of a better way to go, or?
So we mostly using WaveRNN. I mean, to me, it's hard to compare which model is better because we didn't do extensive comparison between the two models. But my personal view is WaveRNN, you just train it. You do not need train a model first and then do the distill later. So it's kind of easy to work with that. But which way is better? Probably ask DeepMind folks, since they created that technology. They may know better on that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. Thank you for the talk. Just a quick clarification. So you showed the WaveNet versus Tacotron kind of demo. Was the Tacotron generating with WaveRNN as a synthesizer, or with WaveNet also as the synthesizer there?
So for that demo, the WaveNet, for that demo, it's both of them use the same structured WaveNet. The difference is one is conditioned on Tacotron output, and one is conditioned on linguistic features. That's the only difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. My question relates to the role of quotation marks in fiction and style tokens. You know, in the Harry Potter example you gave, there was a part which said, pimply, pimply, oh dear, said Hermione. So clearly there's two characters and one narrator voice. And I would expect that an actor would impersonate those characters with different styles. My question to you is, could you hook into your natural language understanding these quotation marks to detect characters and produce some changes in style with constant vocal tract characteristics?
Let me rephrase you. Basically, you're asking if we can, by tweaking the text, if we can get different style. Is that all?
Yes, different styles with same, let's say, same speaker, but different, impersonating various characters in the text.
If you only look at the global style token work, it's I mean, we cannot control at that level, I would say, because you still need a reference speech. If you cannot find a reference speech sounds like that, it's hard to get the things you want. Yeah. But I know some people, some researcher in the perception team, they are starting looking at that by including more contextual features, and I think that's one promising direction to go.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like you could, if you had enough audiobook data, you could probably learn that.
Yeah.
and also I was curious, and very similar question, like if you have like quotation marks and then like please don't do that, he whispered. Would you be able to learn that you need to whisper the first part?
I think the problem is like current limitation of the whole system I described is it's still extract the global features. So if you want some, like in one sentence, if it's something significantly changed, like there are two modes, the model cannot capture it. That's why I mentioned in like next direction probably like segmental based. Like you can capture the first part of a sentence is like this based on this context, and when you move to the next context, it changes the voice. Yeah.
Like a language model for style, for like that evolves. And all right, thanks a lot. Let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you.
Instead of